And welcome to The Bottom Line, where we unpack some of the main business and economic stories of the day. Poland's Minister for State Assets, Jakub Jaworowski, is determined to introduce real corporate governance when it comes to state-owned enterprises. In layman's terms, we're talking about accountability and best practice. So today we want to find out about Poland's state-owned enterprises, big businesses the government has stakes in. Poland boasts quite a few of these SOEs, but in recent months they've been undergoing detailed auditing for alleged misconduct. The hope is to introduce proper levels of corporate governance once and for all. I'm joined by Mirosław Kachniewski, president of the Polish Association of Listed Companies, to tell us about the best way forward. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us in the studio. So to begin with, what are the main problems that are plaguing Poland's state-owned enterprises, and more importantly, where do they stem from?
Well, basically the problem is that for a few years we had really problems with appropriate level of governance there, appropriate level of selection and nomination of the people who were running these companies. And I think that's the basic reason for which we are meeting today and discussing that.
Mm-hmm. And what are the main problems that we are looking at now? What has this auditing process brought to the forefront?
Well, we've just heard a few minutes ago that there are some notifications to public prosecutor. That means that it's not just corporate governance. I think it's something much deeper, that if these notifications are prepared, I understand they are based on something and they are really the problems with the violation of the rules rather than just proper misconduct of governance.
Mm-hmm. And to what extent do you think that the government, not necessarily this current government that we have in power now, but the government as an institution, should be involved in holding state-owned enterprises accountable for their management standards and decisions?
Well, I would say that we should divide state-owned enterprises into two parts. The first one, well, these are the enterprises which are somehow involved in execution of the state policy. And the second, so these are the state enterprises which are owned by the state for no reason, in fact. Mm-hmm. The latter, I think, should be simply solved. Mm-hmm. But the first one, where the state-owned enterprises really have to execute state policy, well, they should be more or less treated the same way as ministries, state agencies, and so on. I would imagine that in such circumstances, really, the state should have quite strong influence on operation of these entities.
And how would you assess the process of auditing that has been taking place now for all the various enterprises that are being scrutinized?
Well, I don't know enough really to comment on that. I understand that these were independent audits, and I would assume they've been done appropriately, and we'll see what's going to happen. There is not so much information in public domain now, so I can't really comment on details here.
And what procedures do you believe should be implemented to safeguard against mismanagement from here onwards? And obviously, I'm referring to a process of transparency and best practice, principles of corporate governance that should be implemented from here onwards.
Well, the first thing, in my opinion, we should really have appropriate process of selection, nomination of managers and people who are members of supervisory boards, by which I mean not just creating a group of people who are eligible to be selected, but rather I would define very specifically any particular single position in the management team and in the supervisory team of any company. I think we should clearly define what competences are necessary for the given post and what responsibility is aligned with that.
Can you, for our viewers, can you just differentiate a supervisory board position and a management board position?
Well, definitely. In two-tier system, which we've got in Poland, totally different competences would be for management and for supervision. But in both cases, I would imagine that we should have very clearly detailed who is for what reason in a given board, supervisor or management.
Okay. And we can expect that new standards should become the norm here in Poland, but how soon can these norms become just a normal standard here? Because are there any European countries perhaps that we can refer to that have tried and tested norms, even if we can just refer to a certain, just partially, can we refer to any other countries that have tried and tested methods?
Well, I'm not familiar of any state which would have more experience with state-owned enterprises than we have in Poland or in other communist countries, former communist countries. And for this reason, it will be very, very difficult.
What about BP or Shell, for instance?
Well, it's a totally different story. I mean, here we have really a situation where you've got a company which, although as petrochemical company, PKN, if you are referring to this particular case, well, they are a listed company, large listed company, but we have to have in mind that the state is really controlling majority of decisions which are made in all areas, membership of supervisory or management board, and many other things. So
should that change?
Well, that again, let me come back to the idea whether such an enterprise is a part of mission of the state or not. If it is a part of mission of the state, I would say that perhaps political influence should be even stronger. So let's clearly say, yes, we politicians nominate the people to this company because we want this company to execute this and use these areas of state policy. On the other hand, since we are nominating people there, we feel responsible for operation of these people and of this company. I think it would be more fair.
What is your opinion, though? Do you think that the government should be less involved, should have less influence, less of a stake?
I would say that you should go either one way or the other. So either this is independent company and you don't interfere with that at all, or if you really want this company to be part of the state policy, you have to treat such a company the same way as ministry. And I would imagine that the selection and nomination process could be similar as you have in case of selecting and nominating ministers, for instance.
And we hear, obviously, many of these cases of alleged mismanagement have been reported to the public prosecutor's office. Can you tell us when we can expect to hear any further steps or any more information, how soon we might hear more?
Well, I would imagine that this question should be rather asked to the public prosecutor, because I don't even know what is the scope of that, how much time they need to read, verify, and so on. But I would imagine that it's rather months than weeks, because as I understand, this will be quite complicated problems and they will require a lot of time to analyze.
Okay, so are you saying that this is the first time that this sort of level of scrutiny is happening when it comes to state-owned enterprises?
Well, I don't remember any case when we would go so far in these areas over the last decades.
Okay, so this is the first time for Poland. That's quite interesting. So what kind of skills do you think that these new management boards will require, and especially the supervisory boards that you refer to? Because, you know, you speak of how they need to be independent. The supervisory board differs very much from the management board. What kind of skills are we looking at that we haven't had so far?
Well, I would think that the same as you would look for in any commercial company or in any area where you need good management. So the people who are qualified in managing other people, in defining strategy, in delivering this strategy, in fact, over time. And obviously, depending on the particular part of the business, they would need to be familiar with the business itself. So it's also important. In terms of supervisory board, well, mostly people who are qualified in audit, in accounting issues, supervision. So these are the people who, in fact, well, should have a lot of experience in not only perhaps even in supervisory boards, but perhaps even in detecting fraud, because as we could see, well, the money involved is so big that the temptation could be extremely big as well. For this reason, the people at supervisory boards really should be very, very good.
But when we look at successful businesses and enterprises, there's a certain level of risk that one has to take in order to get a business going, to identify that the endeavor is worth progressing with. How do these state-owned enterprises ensure that they have the right person on board to make those calls?
Well, it's really important because the person who is making any managerial decision actually has to assess what risk to take. Business risk is related or inherent in any business decision. And, well, that's the question of the quality and the experience of the given manager to know which risk to take and how to involve in a given risk, because in many cases it's not just being risk averse. We won't do that because it's risky and so on. Well, we could perhaps try to risk, but perhaps on the starting point we should be more careful, perhaps engaging less money at the very beginning to make sure how the given new area of activity is going to evolve.
And just as we wrap up, Olefiny 3 has been making headlines this week here in Poland. It was supposed to be a large petrochemical plant built by Poland's largest energy company. What happened there? What was the crucial thing that went wrong?
I really don't know, because first, I'm not an expert in this particular business, and we don't know enough yet. I think we have to wait until the documents which have been delivered to public prosecutor perhaps will be available to all of us, we'll be able to read them, and then we'll be able to make our assessment. But definitely, I think if the notification has been prepared, it is based on something.
Okay. Mirosław Kachniewski, thank you so much for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you very much.
And that was Mirosław Kachniewski, president of the Polish Association of Listed Companies, here on The Bottom Line with us. Thank you so much for joining us today on Business Arena. I was your host, Marie Cato. Join us every weekday for Business Arena at 5 p.m. CET on TVP World. And for the latest in regional business, follow us on X and on tvpworld.com. And for more news and features, stay with us on TVP World. Goodbye.